You are listening to audiobooks at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Up next is Demon Emperor Episode Bay. Chapter Kong. The situation in Vu Prefecture wasn't looking good, and matters concerning the re-establishment of the Taemanyi Tong garrison and its military leadership had become more pressing. The atmosphere at court, too, grew increasingly intense due to the contention for this command position. Regrettably, Emperor Nguyen Ho consistently refrained from expressing his stance. By the lake, Nguyen Ho stood beneath the canopy of a tree, his figure ramrod straight. Even from his back, one could sense an imposing, even murderous, aura, though he wore casual attire. A sword hung at his hip. There was a time when Nguyen Ho, this demon, even slept with a sword as his pillow, ready to draw it and unleash a massacre in all directions should any disturbance occur in the dead of night. But his current action didn't quite resemble that of a demon. Instead, it reminded one of a certain prime minister who committed murder in a beautiful dream. "Your Majesty, Minister Tran requests an audience." Nguyen Ho's leisurely moment was short-lived, shattered by a eunuch who came to report. "Nguyen Ho? Tran Quang of the Lang Fong Tran family?" The eunuch. "Yes." Nguyen Ho asked the eunuch. "I've heard that this Lang Fong Tran family claims to be a noble house spanning 1,000 years, with ancestors traceable back to the Tran clan of the ancient Qi state. Since the Han dynasty, they have produced high-ranking officials for generations. Is this true?" The eunuch, unsure of the emperor's intentions behind these words, hastily bowed deeply. He replied, "This servant is not clear on this matter." Nguyen Ho. "Let him in." Not long after, a man with a gold fish pouch at his waist was led into the imperial garden. He walked past a group of armored warriors, his back bent as he followed the eunuch. The man possessed handsome features and an elegant demeanor, clearly indicating his upbringing in an exceedingly wealthy and powerful family. Only such a distinguished noble household could cultivate such a person. Even among officials, in terms of appearance alone, he was enough to outshine the rest. However, Tran Quang, Minister Tran, a man of noble lineage and a dignitary at court, displayed the utmost reverence upon seeing the emperor. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Nguyen Ho turned around. Several eunuchs brought over a folding chair, and he sat down directly. Tran Quang waited quietly, motionless. Nguyen Ho sat majestically in the highest position, while the scion of a renowned family, whose lineage had perhaps spanned hundreds of years, prostrated himself on the ground. Like a dog, the emperor's authority and power were instantly manifest. Nguyen Ho spoke, his words immediately carrying a sense of oppression. "Minister Tran, you are not on duty at your office today. What important matter brings you to see me?" Tran Quang hurriedly explained, "I have come regarding the matter discussed at court today." Nguyen Ho smiled and said, "This matter is naturally handled by the esteemed ministers in the Grand Council." The implication was, "You are not qualified to interfere in this." Having spoken, Nguyen Ho showed no further interest, too lazy to say more to Tran Quang, and prepared to leave. But Tran Quang understood from that sentence that although the emperor seemed to entrust this matter to the ministers in the Grand Council, he was, in fact, dissatisfied with their involvement. He immediately crawled forward on his knees, kowtowed again, and said, "I believe that the candidates nominated by the ministers at court are all unsuitable." Upon hearing this, Nguyen Ho finally paused. "Oh? Then who do you think is the most suitable?" Tran Quang said loudly, "Only General Yuqi." Nguyen Ho seemed to be deliberating. "General Yuqi? It seems his qualifications are somewhat lacking." Tran Quang, however, was exceptionally firm. "Military affairs are a matter of national importance. The ground of life and death. The path to survival or ruin. How can there be discrimination? General Yuqi, in terms of loyalty and military strategy, is the most suitable person." Nguyen Ho tilted his head slightly, as if wanting to scrutinize Tran Quang's face, to see through to the deepest secrets in his heart. Abilities or military strategy, these were all just excuses. Having reached this position, everyone's thoughts were incredibly complex. Tran Quang had specially come to him to recommend a worthy talent for the country. claiming it was all for the greater good. Nguyen Ho didn't believe a single word. The scions of these powerful families were not naive individuals from impoverished backgrounds. But Nguyen Ho quickly understood. This Lang Phong Tran family must have sensed Nguyen Ho's dissatisfaction with Huang Wei and the Huang family behind him. Even realizing that Nguyen Ho was preparing to suppress Huang Wei to thereby fragment the seemingly unbreakable local factions. And the declining Lang Phong Tran family saw this as an opportunity. They wanted to cooperate with Nguyen Ho to strike at Huang Wei. Ultimately, to replace Huang Wei. In the words that often churned in the heart of this demon, Nguyen Ho, it was. That one can be replaced. Nguyen Ho thoughtfully gazed at Tran Quang's face, his posture slightly leaning forward. Nguyen Ho thought to himself, oh, this Tran family has quite the ambition. But Nguyen Ho didn't know that Tran Quang, at this very moment, felt immense pressure, his back even soaked with sweat. This Nguyen Ho was not like the Emperor Nguyen Ho of the past. He was someone who spent all day pondering who his enemies were. Then day after day, fixated on finding and killing them. He carried a blade in his heart, his murderous intent surging, and this kind of murderous intent, coupled with the mentality of getting whatever he wanted, though intangible, could sometimes manifest in many ways. With every additional day Nguyen Ho spent on the imperial throne, this intangible thing expanded, growing more concentrated, as if solidifying into a tangible presence. It made people dare not look at him directly. At this moment, Tran Quang's head was pressed tightly against the ground. His eyes could see the emperor's shoes. Besides that, there was something else, intermittently visible beside the shoes. It was the emperor's scabbard. Though the possibility was clearly very low, Tran Quang always felt that, if he answered just one sentence incorrectly, the terrifying figure before him would stand up, draw his sword, and kill him. The emperor wearing a sword at his hip served as a further reminder that the one sitting up there was not a clay idol to be molded at will, but a man-eating tiger. Proximity to the emperor was like being near a tiger. And he, at this moment, was exactly like a dog, with its tail clamped firmly between its legs before this ferocious beast. Indeed, even if this fierce tiger were to devour him alive on the spot, he reckoned he wouldn't dare to move an inch. A person of formidable strength, with a powerful inner self. When killing, he no longer needed to display force. Even death, for the emperor, was a bestowal of grace. It was called bestowing death. Tran Quang couldn't even remember how he had stumbled out of the imperial garden. His face deathly pale, his figure a little unsteady. He walked straight out of the imperial city and saw his carriage waiting to pick him up. Then, he was helped onto the carriage. Go, return. The family servant was frightened by Tran Quang's appearance. How could he end up like this after just meeting the emperor? The family servant, Master, what's wrong with you? It took a long while before Tran Quang exhaled sharply. This is the first time I've had a private audience with His Majesty. And the first time I've been so close to him. Today, I truly know what the emperor's might is. However, Nguyen Ho ultimately did not give a clear answer, only praising Tran Quang's attitude of recommending talent for the sake of the country. This left Tran Quang feeling somewhat anxious, but he could only depart. Tran Quang truly was ambitious. This time, he also wanted to borrow the emperor's influence to suppress Huang Wei and the Huang family behind him. Aspiring to become a second Huang Wei, the leader of the local noble families. He even harbored greater ambitions, such as manipulating the emperor, or becoming prime minister. But at this very moment, all those thoughts of Tran Quang's had vanished completely. The fear of Nguyen Ho was now deeply ingrained in his heart. As long as that Nguyen Ho remained on the imperial throne, he reckoned it would be difficult for him to harbor any other thoughts. Chapter Mo. The sky was clear and blue. On the official road in the outskirts of the capital city, ginkgo leaves showed a pale green. Nguyen Ho left the capital city today for an inspection. The Imperial Guard's iron cavalry, holding high black dragon banners, escorted him on both sides. The procession of men and horses was vast and imposing. After leaving the capital city, Nguyen Ho headed straight to Duong Ma town. part of the imperial stables. He had arrived at Duong Ma town. The supervisor, leading 100 stable officials, knelt respectfully before the main entrance of the imperial stables office. The doors were lacquered red and studded with bronze nails. A red felt carpet stretched from the blue-tiled courtyard straight into the interior. Your servant, leading all members of the imperial stables, high and low, respectfully welcomes your majesty. It was called the imperial stables and was originally a place for tending horses. However, it now exclusively housed a strange breed of silver-headed donkeys from the mountains. This place had indeed raised quite a few horses before, but when Nguyen Ho came to inspect, he learned that those horses had all been moved to another section of the imperial stables. Nguyen Ho asked, "Why?" The supervisor replied, "Previously, at night, some horses were secretly devoured by the donkeys." Nguyen Ho was astonished. "These creatures even eat horses?" The supervisor said, "This species is extremely ferocious. None of us dare to approach them, not even alone. At night, when we hear strange noises outside, the stable officials dare not venture out. The sky is pitch black, and we fear these vicious creatures might carelessly devour people as well." It was no wonder, if they even ate horses. Swallowing a few humans wouldn't be a difficult feat. Although these were donkeys, their bloodline was far inferior to their ancestors. But ultimately, they were still a demonic breed. The supervisor cautiously followed behind Nguyen Ho, reporting on the recent situation at the imperial stables. Later, following the guidance of the celestial maiden palace, your servants had a divine statue carved and enshrined within the stables for worship. After that, these silver-headed donkeys finally settled down and no longer dared to cause disturbances at night. Nguyen Ho examined the divine statue and immediately recognized it as the white bone spirit. Nguyen Ho inspected the condition of these silver-headed donkeys. Every single one was fat, healthy, and seemed quite at ease. However, within the imperial stables, Nguyen Ho noticed something that didn't belong with them: a monkey. The supervisor answered, "This is a monkey kept to ward off plagues from the horses." Upon hearing this, Nguyen Ho was startled. "Bai Ma Wen?" The supervisor nodded. "Precisely." Only then did Nguyen Ho understand. It turned out that since ancient dynasties, the imperial stables, or even common stables, had a custom of keeping monkeys to prevent horse plagues. Thus, this monkey was also known as a horse plague avoidance monkey. Nguyen Ho watched the monkey darting and leaping about. Finding it quite amusing, Nguyen Ho asked, "Don't these silver-headed donkeys devour this monkey as well?" The supervisor said, "We have never found any monkeys missing." Nguyen Ho walked around, inspecting. These silver-headed donkeys had only been moved here a few days ago, and now they seemed to have settled in, according to the method the white bone spirit had taught him. Before he could forge the divine mule army, he first had to create a donkey head. The previous donkey head had been killed by Nguyen Ho, so naturally, he now wanted to create a new one, just as one must first select a general before a military campaign. These donkeys also needed a leader to be chosen to command and control this divine mule army. Nguyen Ho had come here today precisely to see if any among these silver-headed donkeys were suitable for selection. After a round of inspection, Nguyen Ho finally selected 2 silver-headed donkeys that appeared the most spiritually potent. These 2 silver-headed donkeys not only possessed large, powerful bodies but also looked identical to the donkey Nguyen Ho had previously seen in the ancient tomb on Phoenix Hoang Mountain. Their hind legs were exceptionally strong, and they were cunningly intelligent. As if sentient, even an ordinary person could perceive the demonic strangeness of these 2 donkeys. Nguyen Ho had his men lead the 2 donkeys before him. He sized them up. Not bad. They look very spirited. Nguyen Ho knew these 2 donkeys were sentient, perhaps even capable of understanding the meaning behind human words. "You too. Which of you is willing to obey our commands?" In truth, Nguyen Ho didn't need to ask. Controlling the white bone spirit was tantamount to controlling these silver-headed donkeys. Between these silver-headed donkeys and Nguyen Ho, the emperor who stood at a higher echelon, there was still the intermediary layer of the white bone spirit. making them unreachable to him directly. But Nguyen Ho felt that he would likely have frequent interactions with these silver-headed donkeys in the future. He was different from ordinary sons of heaven. Often, when he awoke in the dead of night, Nguyen Ho would dream of himself leading heavenly hosts and myriad cavalries, leveling mountains and rivers, storming the state altars and ancestral temples of other nations, and demolishing the shrines and grand halls of celestial gods and earthly deities. To lead cavalry and conquer the world, how unfettered and satisfying that would be. Therefore, he had always paid close attention to these silver-headed donkeys and was willing to invest some time in taming them. However, these donkeys were not necessarily all willing to submit to Nguyen Ho. Among them, the donkey on the right was exceedingly arrogant. It actually snorted derisively at Nguyen Ho. It held its head high, its eyes filled with contempt as it looked at Nguyen Ho. The demonic insolence and savage ferocity in its large eyes were displayed with an almost refined clarity. This was the very picture of ignorance. It considered itself ferocious, unaware that there were far more vicious beings in the world. Nguyen Ho immediately smiled. After smiling, he said to the guard beside him, "Butcher it." The donkey seemed to understand. Its ears perked up, and then it let out a strange, panicked bray. But it was too late. Several soldiers muzzled it, bound its legs, and dragged it away to be butchered. "If I want to kill you, I kill you." The previous donkey head had even been made into roasted meat. Now this one would receive the same treatment as a donkey head. The supervisor's rank was too low. He dared not utter a word from beginning to end. Moreover, a eunuch had previously met a tragic fate merely for questioning Nguyen Ho's reasons. So the eunuchs present were even more terrified to speak. A young official following behind sighed and said, "Such a peculiar breed. It's truly a bit of a pity to kill it." Nguyen Ho said, "This donkey looks so fat and healthy. That horse was undoubtedly secretly eaten by it." The young official cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty is indeed as sharp-eyed as a torch. To have immediately apprehended this culprit." Nguyen Ho glanced at him. The man actually believed it. Even without this excuse, Nguyen Ho could have just said it stepped out of the stable with its right foot first, and then had it killed. The remaining silver-headed donkey was now trembling uncontrollably. It actually dropped directly to its knees on the ground, braying urgently, almost as if it were about to speak human words. It seemed to be saying, "I am willing to exert myself for your Majesty." Nguyen Ho, as if he truly understood, nodded slightly. "If that is the case, I shall appoint you General of the Divine Mules." This donkey kowtowed to Nguyen Ho repeatedly, the sheer joy of having escaped death evident on its face. Its demeanor was not that of a donkey, but clearly resembled that of a treacherous court official. Nguyen Ho, very good. A teachable young one. Then, two shamans from the Celestial Maiden Palace emerged and led the donkey away. The donkey, still thinking it was about to be butchered, was so terrified it brayed incessantly. Unexpectedly, the shamans lifted it onto a cart frame and then bound it securely. Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw. The donkey was forced into a sitting position, looking very much like a person cowering in fear. Attendants, armor it. The suit of armor, which had been commissioned long ago, was fitted onto this donkey general. Then, the shamans began to pull the cart, heading towards Phoenix Hoang Mountain. That was the site of the ancient tomb Nguyen Ho had visited before. At this moment, these ancient tombs had all been cleared out. To refine the new donkey head, the process also had to be conducted there. Nguyen Ho watched the donkey, forced into armor, mimicking a human posture. He suddenly recalled what Du Hong, the celestial maiden, had once told him. The key to the art of the divine way lay in the word, resemblance. At this very moment, wasn't this donkey imitating the form of a human? It now seemed that this method of refining demonic creatures also bore some connection to the divine way. After settling the matter of this donkey, it was time to attend to official business. Nguyen Ho, I recall Stonebridge Manor isn't far from here. Is it? The middle-aged eunuch attending nearby knew perfectly well that Stonebridge Manor was a good 30 or 40 li away. But since the Son of Heaven had declared it wasn't far, Then it certainly wasn't far. The eunuch replied, "Indeed, Your Majesty. Would you like to proceed there shortly to take a look?" Nguyen Ho. Let's go take a look. Leaving the imperial stables, Nguyen Ho traveled directly along the main road on the capital's outskirts and soon arrived at Stone Bridge Manor of the Chen clan in Lang Fong. From a distance, Nguyen Ho spotted the stone bridge of Stone Bridge Manor. Before the bridge, the entire Chen clan, high and low, along with their families and servants, were already waiting respectfully to welcome him. Minister Chen stood at the forefront to receive the imperial presents. Upon seeing Nguyen Ho, he immediately knelt, showing no fear that the horses might trample him. "Your Majesty, your servant, Chen Guang, leading my entire household, high and low, respectfully welcomes the sacred presence." Nguyen Ho looked at the stone bridge. It could be said that he had experienced his first truly perilous moment here. If those nether soldiers hadn't lacked a donkey head and thus been unable to summon the silver-headed donkeys, the situation at that time would have been genuinely unpredictable. Nguyen Ho. Speaking of which, this place of yours can be considered a fortunate land for us. Chen Guang hurriedly said, "That is because Your Majesty's boundless fortune reaches the heavens. Naturally protected by gods and Buddhas." Nguyen Ho entered the manor. The first thing that caught his eye was a young maiden holding a long zither. Nguyen Ho immediately turned his gaze towards Chen Guang. Nguyen Ho had come to find Chen Guang to discuss official matters. Yet Chen Guang had arrogantly presumed to fathom the emperor's heart. His intentions were deserving of death. Chen Guang said, "Your Majesty, your servant has recently heard that the sacred presence has a fondness for elegant musical arts. In ancient times, the Duke of Zhou established rites and composed music to share joy with the world. Emperor Wu of Han established the music bureau to collect folk songs. Your servant has an untalented daughter who possesses some accomplishment in this area. She is proficient in the wondrous art of the flute, as well as song and dance. Today, your servant boldly beseeches Your Majesty to spare a moment of leisure, so that my humble daughter may present her art. To bring even a little pleasure to Your Majesty would be your servant's greatest wish." Faced with such obsequious flattery, pandering to a monarch's perceived vices, Nguyen Ho's expression turned cold. Then, he flicked his sleeve. "Do not let this happen again. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Hai Nguyen Ho hadn't come to listen to singing. He had important business to attend to. However, listening a bit while he was at it wouldn't be an issue. The young woman in a light-colored silk dress glided across the blue brick floor. Nguyen Ho could smell the stork's fragrance. Recently, Nguyen Ho had also become familiar with various incenses and could even distinguish them by scent. His gaze swept over her. The young woman consistently walked half a step behind, her cloud-like hair coiled high, a golden hairpin fastened askew. As she moved, the hairpin remained perfectly still. This demeanor was clearly cultivated from a young age. One could only imagine how much effort had gone into it. About her person, she possessed a noble air familiar to Nguyen Ho, yet also carried an air of innocence. And the Zeton wood zither inlaid with mother of pearl, leaning against her elbow, added several degrees of artistic flair to the young woman. Important matters needed attention, and deep affections also needed nurturing. With the Son of Heaven gracing them with his presence, the Tran family could be said to have pulled out all the stops to receive him. Tran Quang seemed to have anticipated the Son of Heaven's return visit and had made preparations in advance. This Stone Bridge Manor displayed a few things that hadn't been there when Nguyen Ho last visited. The Tran family had indeed invested considerable thought into this manor on the outskirts of the capital city. The scenery was captivating, possessing a distinct pastoral charm, and true opulence was evident in every minute detail. Not only that, as Nguyen Ho toured the manor, he noticed that the number of people within it had more than doubled since his last visit. At dusk, a banquet was set up in a pavilion within the manor, named the Hidden Ink Pavilion. Next, Nguyen Ho was to witness firsthand the wealth and splendor of an esteemed aristocratic family. Outside, a full 360 gilded lotus lanterns were lit, hung along the path leading in, illuminating the 7 large rooms as if it were daytime. Inside the pavilion alone, 40 servants in blue robes were in attendance. Servants swiftly carried in a zeton wood daybed inlaid with mother-of-pearl, upon which was spread a brocade mattress embroidered with a 3-colored peacock. Nguyen Ho sat down directly upon it. As the back of his hand brushed against the silk brocade, his skin could feel a distinct coolness. His gaze swept around, despite so many people inside and outside the pavilion. Nguyen Ho heard no sound, save for the faintest footsteps. It was exceedingly quiet. It seemed that as soon as he sat down, even the insects dared not chirp. When the first dish, golden numbness, jade delicacy, was served, Nguyen Ho's thoughts were not on the delicacy but on the sound of the water clock dripping under the eaves. After a long while, Nguyen Ho looked towards Tran Quang, who was seated below. He had come this time precisely to reach a true understanding with the Lang Fong Tran family. He would grant the Lang Fong Tran family wealth and honor, and in return, the Lang Fong Tran family would be his soldiers in the imperial court. He could even promise to let the Tran family replace the Hoang family. To let Tran Quang replace Hoang Hoi, provided he offered enough. And below, Tran Quang, who seemed to have been constantly observing the Son of Heaven's every move from the corner of his eye, immediately stood up, walked to the center, clasped his hands, and knelt on the ground. Nguyen Ho, I have heard that the Tran family, for generations, has been a lineage of noble scholars, upholding poetry and rites as family traditions. Why not allow me to broaden my knowledge a little? Tran Quang was overjoyed. Your humble servant. On behalf of the entire Tran household. Thanks, Your Majesty. Following that, the descendants of the Tran family presented poems one after another. The Son of Heaven, seated on high, couldn't quite discern their merits or flaws. But at the very least, it instantly lent a more refined air to the banquet. Finally, Nguyen Ho praised them, saying, truly a scholarly family of great standing, with a tradition of poetry and rites. The Tran descendants, having been praised, all expressed their gratitude, but beyond that, there was nothing more they could do. Thus, discreetly, these Tran descendants turned their gazes one by one towards Tran Quang, looking at him earnestly, although not everyone knew exactly what was happening, much less the words Tran Quang had spoken while kneeling before Nguyen Ho. Everyone present knew this was a tremendous opportunity. The Lang Fong Tran family had been in decline. Although their wealth remained, few among them held official positions, and none held positions of extremely high status. The Son of Heaven's visit was an opportunity, but the key to seizing it lay not in their presentation of poems, nor in any extraordinary talent or wisdom, but in something else entirely. Tran Quang understood their meaning and sighed inwardly. Although offering his daughter to curry favor with the Son of Heaven was not particularly honorable, at this moment, honor was no longer the primary concern. It had to be done. Unconsciously, the others slowly withdrew. Next, more elegant diversions arrived. Nguyen Ho looked around and observed musicians silently appearing behind crystal curtains on both sides, tuning their phoenix-headed Konghou lutes. The young woman who had been attending by the Son of Heaven's side finally came down to perform. Tran Quang's actual age was perhaps a bit older, but he appeared to be in his early 30s, some might even believe him to be in his late 20s. Unexpectedly, his daughter was already so grown. That young woman played the jade zither and sang in the Chu dialect. If there were someone on that mountain yonder. Ah! From the eaves hung 5-colored silk streamers, fluttering gently in the night breeze, mirroring the Milky Way in the sky above. Nguyen Ho listened to the zither, lightly tapping to the rhythm. Afterward, more and more dancing girls streamed into the pavilion. When the dancers withdrew, actors performing acrobatic skits immediately took their place. Impressive. The scions of these aristocratic families secretly knew how to enjoy life even more than Nguyen Ho. This Son of Heaven, the number of wives, concubines, and servants they maintained, their daily extravagant and wasteful expenses, were truly beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Fine wine and delicious food were spread before him. The sleeves of beautiful women fluttered. and the sound of bamboo flutes reached his ears. When the banquet concluded, Nguyen Ho suddenly remembered, it seems we haven't discussed the matter yet? When Nguyen Ho wanted to find Tran Quang to discuss official business. It was already very late. There was no choice but to rest first. They would talk tomorrow. But upon entering his resting place, he discovered that the young woman had suddenly appeared beside his bed. Nguyen Ho entered the room. The beauty, who had been sitting on a purple wooden couch, heard the commotion, hurriedly stood up, tucked her sleeves, and knelt on the ground. He looked at the beauty, vaguely understanding something. It wasn't that the matter hadn't been discussed. Or rather, was it that a certain condition had to be met before discussions could continue? Accepting this beauty was a price offered by the Lang Fong Tran family. If he didn't accept her, there would be a different price list. At the very least, it was impossible for Nguyen Ho to expect the Lang Fong Tran family to disregard everything. For the Son of Heaven, a fondness for women could not simply be called a fondness for women. The imperial harem played many roles, influencing all aspects of the realm, and was tied to the interests, lives, and deaths of countless people. There was no way around it. Nguyen Ho would just have to endure a little hardship. This responsibility towards all living beings in the realm could only be shouldered by him. After a brief pause, Nguyen Ho reconsidered and made the decision to suffer a little, for the sake of all living beings. Then lifted the curtain and went in. Although Nguyen Ho had seen her earlier today, it was from a distance, or under the scrutiny of many eyes. But at this very moment, as they faced each other, Nguyen Ho could even smell the fresh fragrance of her newly washed hair. In the room, there were only a few attending maidens. "Stand up, let me see." In the dim, hazy light, the beauty seemed to have reapplied her makeup. The Wadian ornament on her forehead was blood red, her lips a deep crimson. Golden light filtered through the lampshade, casting down a pale yellow hue that intertwined with the light red, making her appear even more captivating. The dimness here erased any detailed imperfections, leaving only a heart-stirring classical beauty. Even the maidservant holding a lantern in front of the screen was as breathtakingly beautiful as a celestial fairy. To be able to stand here, one naturally possessed supreme looks. It was just that their beauty differed in type. The young woman stood up, timidly raising her head to look at the inherently majestic Son of Heaven. Yet, Nguyen Ho's distinctive trait was that his imperial majesty was accompanied by an unabashedly invasive and wild aura. "Nguyen Ho, what is your name?" The young woman, Tran Dao Ko. Nguyen Ho asked again. "What is your birth order in the Tran family?" The young woman respectfully replied, "My father has only me as a daughter." Nguyen Ho thought to himself, this Tran Quang was truly willing to make sacrifices. He gained an even clearer understanding of Tran Quang's astuteness. Without any ceremony, Nguyen Ho embraced her with one arm, his other hand wrapping around her waist and then tracing upwards exploratively. One arm went under her knees, resting on her firm, rounded thighs. "The beauty, your majesty." "The lamps." Nguyen Ho. "Why blow out the lamps?" Nguyen Ho had drunk a lot of wine today, and the wickedness in his heart grew more intense. A session of passionate lovemaking still left him feeling unsatisfied. He casually reached out and pulled both maid servants from behind the curtain into the room. "What, this is your cousin? Never mind." Chapter Ba. After dealing with his own discomforts, Nguyen Ho began to attend to important matters. Having stood up, Nguyen Ho surveyed the entire Stone Bridge Manor from a high vantage point. The river, like a belt, meandered around the manor. Fields and plots stretched out in an interconnected expanse. And there were even waterwheels and mills. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho was pondering, quote, "From this manor alone, how much land tax can the Tran family collect? How many people are there in and around this manor? And how many soldiers can be mobilized? Besides this estate, how many such places does this Tran family have in Lang Fong? How far can their influence spread? And how many people do they control?" This was precisely the terrifying aspect of the aristocratic clans of this era. Did you think these aristocratic clans could only discuss lofty matters of sages in the imperial court? occasionally uttering a few phrases about ancestral rules being unchangeable? Was that all? Nguyen Ho, having been an emperor for a time, now looked at Stonebridge Manor and perceived a different aspect. These aristocratic families, given the right opportunity, could mobilize troops to directly seize control of a region, letting you, this son of heaven, know to whom the land west of the city truly belonged. Perhaps, in some warehouse of this manor, hundreds of sets of iron armor were hidden, and they were just waiting for the right time. Don't be fooled by Nguyen Ho's words yesterday about scholarly families and inherited rights. Many of the Tran family descendants he met had practiced martial arts since childhood. If they donned heavy armor, they could slaughter in all directions. Perhaps some were skilled in both horsemanship and archery, capable of leading cavalry charges. "Yeah, quick, 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 follow me." As he thought this, Nguyen Ho indeed saw several youths in the distance, riding horses and playing. Then what about the Hoang clan? Nguyen Ho thought of that Hoang Hoi. In reality, the Tran family and the Hoang family were of the same kind. One was just slightly weaker in strength, the other slightly more powerful in influence. Thus, one was respectful and obedient, the other arrogant and haughty. The Hoang family behind that Hoang Hoi was even more powerful, capable of mobilizing more people, and possessing greater influence at the grassroots level. Therefore, he believed he should hold more power, covertly opposing and obstructing Nguyen Ho at every turn. Hoang Hoi. Nguyen Ho's voice was indifferent, yet it carried a hint of killing intent. It was not just aimed at Hoang Hoi alone, but at the entire Hoang clan. Even more so, it was aimed at these aristocratic clans that acted like local tyrants. The sun gradually rose, its golden rays casting a scorching heat upon people. But Nguyen Ho was in no mood for sightseeing. He descended and, surrounded by servants, walked to the main hall of the front courtyard. Tran Quang was already waiting there and performed another grand salutation to Nguyen Ho. In the early morning, Nguyen Ho once again experienced the extravagant and wasteful lifestyle of the aristocratic clans of this era. And then, in a leisurely mood, strolled through the garden. Finally, Nguyen Ho sat in a pavilion, while Tran Quang knelt on the ground, saying, "Your Majesty, this is the memorial in which I recommend General Yuchi." Having said that, he held the memorial high. To become Nguyen Ho's pawn, to be the son of heaven's hawk and hound, was not so easy. The Tran clan needed to offer enough, and a mere woman was certainly not sufficient, even if she was Tran Quang's only daughter. She could only be considered an appetizer. Wasn't this it? Nguyen Ho was about to state his terms. Bring Minister Tran's memorial for me to see." Nguyen Ho gestured, and the middle-aged eunuch beside him immediately stepped forward, took the memorial, and presented it to Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho skimmed through it, then had the eunuch put it away. Nguyen Ho first showed a pleased expression, then asked Tran Quang, "Regarding General Yuchi, whom you recommend? Minister Hoang has repeatedly argued in court that it is not feasible. What do you think should be done, my dear minister?" Tran Quang immediately said, "Minister Hoang judges with public interest in mind, indeed. Military affairs are matters of state, and those not well versed in military strategy and tactics cannot discuss them lightly. Your Majesty should entrust these matters to capable ministers to pacify the realm." The Son of Heaven tapped his knuckle lightly on the table. If, during tomorrow's court assembly, Minister Hoang were to bluntly refute this in court, Nguyen Ho was clearly intending for Tran Quang to openly confront Hoang Hoi in court. Tran Quang immediately stated, "Military and state affairs are of utmost importance. Ultimate decision-making is the Son of Heaven's authority. How can a subordinate minister be allowed to overstep his bounds? I am your Majesty's subject and absolutely cannot tolerate such transgressive behavior." At this point, Nguyen Ho's intention to win over one faction, strike at another, divide and conquer them individually, had truly begun. The local factions had always been led by the Hoang family. Tran Quang and the Tran clan of Lang Fong, who stood behind him, had, in fact, always followed the Hoang family's lead, cheering them on. With this backstabbing move from Tran Quang, one wondered if Hoang Hoi could withstand it. This was a good start. If Tran Quang could betray Hoang Hoi, couldn't others betray him as well? The situation in the imperial court was thus opened up. Nguyen Ho then mentioned his second condition: if General Yuchi is indeed appointed as this commander, then the transportation of provisions and logistics, I fear, will not be easy. Lang Fong was right in Vu Prefecture, and the Tran clan could be said to be a powerful local force there. If Nguyen Ho dispatched Yuchi Chongwu to suppress the Hon Tu-man, they could provide immense assistance. Tran Quang hesitated for a moment but ultimately agreed. Nguyen Ho was extremely satisfied. Not only had he resolved the most pressing matter at hand, appointing Yuchi Chongwu to lead the newly established Western Man Yi Kong Commandery and command the armies to complete the campaign against the Hon Tu-man. At the same time, he had also partially resolved the issue of provisions and logistics, gaining the assistance of the Tran clan there. Thus, before the war had even begun, Nguyen Ho gained several more degrees of confidence. Having achieved these two things, Nguyen Ho's basic objectives for this visit were mostly met. However, this was only an oral agreement. Implementation would have to follow gradually. Nguyen Ho praised Tran Quang, who also breathed a sigh of relief, a joyful expression on his face. Nguyen Ho stood up and suddenly changed the subject. Quote, I hear the Tran clan has a merchant caravan that can reach Nanzhao and the Bok Ma Southin? Tran Quang said, yes. Nguyen Ho, very good. Perhaps one day I will have use for it. Tran Quang, I am willing to exert myself for your majesty. Nguyen Ho, then I shall wait. It seemed that because Nguyen Ho mentioned the Bok Ma Southin merchant caravan, Tran Quang perceived that the Son of Heaven was interested in the Bok Ma Southin and the Chang people. Tran Quang, quick-witted, immediately had people bring over several strong servants, though they did not look like people from the Central Plains. Your Majesty, these are Chang slaves from the Bok Ma Southin. Nguyen Ho looked at those Chang slaves. These Chang slaves were born and raised on horseback. Their equestrian skills exquisite. It was just that their language was different, making it difficult to understand their thoughts. Chang slaves? Nguyen Ho looked at these Chang slaves who had lived on horseback since childhood and suddenly remembered that silver-haired donkey. If these Chang slaves were combined with the secret techniques of the Divine Donkey Army, could a cavalry unit be trained? The Divine Donkey Army was very peculiar. It wasn't the rider controlling the donkey, but the donkey controlling the rider. The silver-haired donkeys controlled the knights, and all silver-haired donkeys were under the control of the donkey head, whose power came from the white-bone deity. Therefore, as long as the Divine Donkey Army was successfully trained, Nguyen Ho basically wouldn't need to worry about the loyalty of these knights. But the crux of the matter was whether this method was feasible. I'll try it when I get back. For Nguyen Ho, this was also a significant bonus gift. Respectfully sending off Your Majesty. When Nguyen Ho left Stonebridge Manor, he also took the beauty with him, of course, and her jade zither, and her cousin. Nguyen Ho's procession and guards departed in a grand and imposing manner. But the middle-aged eunuch paused, relaying an imperial edict to the Tran clan members who were seeing them off. Or more accurately, to Tran Quang, His Majesty has decreed, Minister Tran of the Ministry of Personnel is diligent and commendable. He is to be immediately admitted to the Hall of Political Affairs to participate in state affairs. Tran Quang, after so much effort, first risking a gamble by entering the palace, then offering his own daughter yesterday, and today, betting the entire Tran clan of Lang Fong. At this very moment, he finally received what he desired. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your immense grace. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Bond. The first thing Nguyen Ho did upon returning to the capital was to summon Chu Jiako of the Trin Tap Bureau. He wanted to inquire about what these officials in the capital had actually been doing. The imperial palace. Nguyen Ho loosened a cord of his cloak. Two palace maids immediately removed it from behind, while he sat directly down on the bed. Go. Summon Chu Ji Company. Yes, this Chu Ji County was, to him, like a ledger detailing the conduct of all officials. This ledger was filled with all sorts of information about them, and naturally, also included matters they wished to keep hidden from others. Not only that, the content within changed daily, often refreshed. Each time he read it, he would find some different content. Perhaps the person recorded a day before was an upright gentleman, but a day later, this person would transform into a beast. Yet, looking closely, this person seemed to still do decent things at times. These civil and military officials don't mind how they present themselves as respectable individuals in front of others, secretly. Who knows what kind of demeanor each of them possesses? Perhaps they were even worse than demons and monsters. And the act of peeking into others' unwillingly revealed secrets, especially the dirty secrets of so-called great figures, was addictive. This voyeuristic desire seemed to be hidden within everyone's heart, especially the Son of Heaven. Sitting in this position, he wished he could grasp everything in the palm of his hand at all times, to control everything under heaven. Therefore, the frequency with which Nguyen Ho summoned this hunting dog, Chu Gi Company, also became increasingly common. Someone passed through the palace gate. Chu Gi Company, who usually maintained a cold expression, making people feel he had a heavy, gloomy aura, had to warm up his expression considerably when he came before Nguyen Ho. Even his speech carried a few more traces of human warmth. He walked with a face as cold as iron striking the ground. But as soon as he entered the door, his waist bent, and then he quickly approached Nguyen Ho and knelt. Anyone with sharp eyes could see he had run over. Those without sharp eyes might have thought he had glided, because he was so fast. He nearly stumbled and fell, then smoothly transitioned into a kowtow, though this posture looked like that of a fluffy dog. "Your servant, Chu Gi Company, pays his respects to your majesty." Nguyen Ho was reading a book and glanced at him. "What kind of act is this? Chu Gi Co. Your Majesty's dragon might grows more imposing by the day. Your servant is merely overwhelmed by it." Half of his words were flattery, and the other half could be considered true. This Chu Gi County was no good man, not just later on, but even before, while still in the army. He was a figure like a life-reaping demon. Later, assassinating the prime minister and suppressing officials. His methods could be described as extremely ruthless. He was a truly vicious character. What talk of flattering the sovereign? What talk of greeting people with a smile? What talk of being arrogant at first and respectful later? Was that something a military officer like Chu Gi County could learn? But when he came before Nguyen Ho, he constantly changed. Not only did he learn quickly, but he also learned very well. From his initial cold and rigid obedience, he gradually learned to echo the Son of Heaven's words. And eventually, he could think of all sorts of ways to adulate and flatter the Son of Heaven. He tried to figure out what the Son of Heaven liked, thinking of all ways to transform himself into the image the Son of Heaven preferred. His demeanor became increasingly subservient, his posture increasingly pliant, and unknowingly, he transformed into this state. Nguyen Ho looked at Chu Gi Ko's drastic change, thinking to himself at this moment, sometimes, what a person becomes is determined by external forces. Nguyen Ho, he gained another layer of profound understanding regarding the Son of Heaven's power. And at this moment, Chu Gi County knelt on the ground, his face wreathed in smiles, but his heart was in turmoil. Could it be that this act of mine displeases His Majesty? Should I change it? Is my smile not adjusted correctly? Recently, he had also hired an aide. This aide was mainly not to help him with work, but to teach him demeanor and etiquette, to teach him how to be an official, in front of the Son of Heaven. Of course, in the end, many things were mixed with his own ideas. Finally, a sentence from Nguyen Ho rescued Chu Gi County from this anxiety. "Rise." Before Nguyen Ho even opened his mouth to ask why he had been summoned, Chu Gi County immediately and perceptively presented the recent record of conduct. A eunuch beside Nguyen Ho received it, placed it on the table next to the Son of Heaven, then retreated far away, to a place where he could vaguely see but not hear. Nguyen Ho picked up the ledger and flipped through it several times. Sometimes he would also open his mouth to ask, while Chu-Ji County respectfully knelt on the ground, answering Nguyen Ho's questions. Your Majesty, look, this is the household of the Vice Minister of Justice. This one is Minister Zhang of the Ministry of Works. The night before last, Censor Liu secretly met with. And this one, Eunuch Li, hosted a banquet yesterday. His behavior at the feast was unrestrained. In these times, the Son of Heaven's supervision of officials basically relied on the censors. It was rare to gather intelligence like Nguyen Ho, sending spies to the homes of nobles and high officials. It was feared that later historical records would not lack a stroke about Nguyen Ho. Calling him the instigator, Nguyen Ho read the ledger on one hand, while on the other, he cross-referenced it with the person's image in his mind, even recalling the information he had obtained using the physiognomy art to read their faces. Comparing the two, many things directly matched. The physiognomy art, it really is very accurate for reading people. And when he saw his father-in-law, Li Hongdao, this old man was not young, and usually presented himself outwardly as a leader of scholars, a model for the gentry. Secretly, his antics were truly unseemly to behold. Of course, it could also be phrased differently. This was called the romanticism of a scholar. Not only that, this old man was even using 5-mineral powder, and had invited a Taoist priest to his home, wanting to learn the ways of immortality. Tisk, the main point arrived, concerning Huang Wei, whom Nguyen Ho had ordered to be strictly monitored. These days, Huang Wei regarded the matter of the Western barbarian righteous followers' commentary with extreme importance, pulling strings and using all sorts of means from top to bottom, precisely to seize this place. And on this ledger, some words Huang Wei secretly spoke to his aides were recorded. What Son of Heaven? If we hadn't protected the late emperor back then, this great Sheng would have perished long ago. His Majesty is ungrateful and treacherous, damaging the words of loyal ministers. This is called cutting one's own roots. Just wait and see. I will watch how this great Sheng perishes in his hands. We must seize this Western barbarian righteous followers' commentary. If the situation changes, we might need to use it. Although Nguyen Ho's expression did not change after reading. For some reason, Chu-Ji County felt as if the sky itself had darkened. He, who had been chattering incessantly, now fell silent. Nguyen Ho. What about today? Chu-Ji Ko. It's here. Your servant had just obtained it and was preparing to bring it to your Majesty. Unexpectedly, your Majesty also happened to summon your servant. Nguyen Ho read today's ledger again. It recorded Huang Wei convening his trusted aides for a discussion. It clearly detailed how they planned to act during tomorrow's morning court. What actions to take, and how to coordinate. It was just that. He probably never expected that such a secret discussion would reach Nguyen Ho's hands so soon after it concluded. At this time, Chu-Ji County hesitated for a moment, then mentioned an unconfirmed piece of news. Chu-Ji Ko. Your servant has received news that an outsider has quietly entered the capital. Possibly to meet someone in the capital. Nguyen Ho asked. Oh. To meet whom? Chu-Ji Ko. Your servant doesn't know either. Only heard that this person is from Ling Prefecture. Nguyen Ho. Pei Yuanzhao? Nguyen Ho smiled upon hearing this. But it was a smile that made Chu-Ji Ko's hair stand on end. Investigate further. Report back. Chu-Ji Company. This hunting dog also revealed a smile and hurriedly kowtowed in response. Yes, he similarly enjoyed digging up the secrets of these nobles and powerful families. Enjoyed watching these people plot various schemes and conspiracies, yet unaware that his men had already secretly seen through them. This kind of feeling, likewise, thrilled him. Chu-Ji County clasped his hands and slowly exited the hall. Once he turned around, his waist immediately straightened, and he looked extremely pleased. Because what he did was approved by the Son of Heaven. He felt his future was even more promising. He failed to notice. The gazes of the surrounding eunuchs towards him were not very kind. If it were a private place, they would have probably wished they could spit in his face and then curse. Hunting dog. After all, previously, this ecological niche of Chu-Ji County belonged to the eunuchs. He has done all this work. What are we eunuchs supposed to do now? Chapter Nam Nguyen Ho was reading, also awaiting news of a certain person's death. He held a book in one hand, his other hand propping up his chin. His shadow stretched across the ground. Eunuchs bustled in and out of the corridor beside the front hall, delivering messages one by one. After all, it wasn't very convenient for Chu Jiaiko to frequently enter and leave the palace. But it was different for the eunuchs. Thus, when Nguyen Ho required it, much of the news could only be relayed by them. And Nguyen Ho also noticed that the eunuchs seemed to be using this method to extend their reach into the investigation bureau. And even more so, to assert their presence before this son of heaven. Nguyen Ho, demonstrating their usefulness. Under the torchlight, a middle-aged eunuch approached and spoke in a low voice. Quote, "Your Majesty, that person fled into the Western market and has not yet been captured." Nguyen Ho slightly raised his head, glancing at this middle-aged eunuch. This person is quite resourceful. Where there were people, there was struggle for power. And moreover, Nguyen Ho discovered that some matters were indeed perfectly suited for them to handle. What is your name? Nguyen Ho finally remembered that he seemed to have never asked this person's name. After all, he might be replaced tomorrow. The middle-aged eunuch almost had tears welling up in his eyes and hurriedly knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, this servant is Wang Ru." Nguyen Ho observed him closely, truly looking at him for the first time. This was a person who, most of the time, appeared very taciturn. Sometimes, you couldn't even sense his existence, as if he were merely a shadow attending to you, a pillar standing to one side. But when you needed him, he would appear right there at the opportune moment. This sounded easy, but was difficult to achieve. Nguyen Ho said, "You are very capable. A competent worker." Wang Ru knelt on the ground. "Thank you for your Majesty's praise. To be able to serve by your Majesty's side is a blessing cultivated over 10 lifetimes for this servant." Nguyen Ho nodded slightly. "Send someone to continue monitoring. Tell Chu Jiaiko to come see me immediately after he's finished. And report any developments right away." Wang Ru was overjoyed. This was the Son of Heaven tacitly acknowledging his involvement in the investigation bureau. Yes. Nguyen Ho read under the lamplight, enjoying the tranquility of the late night. And at this very moment, outside, countless people were desperately rushing about, while others were fleeing for their lives by a hair's breadth. Tens of thousands were acting according to his will, their lives and deaths held in the palm of his hand. West of the capital city, a fierce siege unfolded in a small alley. 10 men, clearly battle-hardened, were trapped here. At this moment, no matter how skilled their martial arts, it was useless. They could only await death. Warriors charged forward one by one, gradually encircling and killing these men, until only the last 2 or 3 were left, struggling in their death throes. At this time, the man carrying a jar smashed it. Instantly, a large fire blazed fiercely, engulfing his body. Boom! Not only that, but within the raging flames, several extremely ferocious demonic figures could be seen rushing out, madly roaring as they swept towards the sky. This time, the surrounding people immediately let out cries of alarm. They were also experienced individuals, although their naked eyes couldn't see those demonic figures. The moment their souls were shaken and they heard the wails of ghosts, they knew what had happened. That person also knows demonic arts. No wonder. I was saying why we couldn't find him for so long. It was like seeing a ghost. I didn't expect there were actual ghosts. On the other side, Nguyen Ho opened his eyes and walked to the front hall. A divine light flashed in his pupils, and he immediately saw those demonic god figures soaring upwards, letting out bizarre, frenzied roars. However, before they could wreak havoc, within the imperial city, several yaksha demonic gods flew out. One skewered them with a fork and ate them raw. Another blew a breath and turned them into fine powder. Who? These demonic gods from an unknown origin simply vanished into thin air. Now, although the inside and outside of this imperial city could not yet be called impregnable, at least it was no longer a place where a few stray malevolent ghosts and wandering spirits from unknown origins could rush into the palace to cause trouble. Finally, Chu Jiai County arrived to report. Your Majesty, that person is dead. This minister failed to retrieve the letter. Please, Your Majesty, assign punishment. Nguyen Ho didn't care whether this person was dead or not, or even what his name was. Have you found out who this person came to meet? Chu Jiako. The place where they previously appeared is not far from Huang Hui's residence. But this minister has no concrete evidence. Nguyen Ho, it doesn't matter. If Nguyen Ho had previously been hesitating between suppressing and then recruiting Huang Wei, or completely eliminating him, at this moment, there was no longer any hesitation. The night was long. Nguyen Ho did not sleep, because he would have to prepare for the morning court session before dawn. If he went to sleep now, he feared he would have to get up as soon as he closed his eyes. He still wore the Son of Heaven sword at his waist, as if always prepared to kill, and unabashedly released his desire for plunder and his killing intent towards all external things. Unexpectedly, someone sought him out to talk. In the mirror, a figure slowly walked out, dressed in celestial robes, possessing a beauty absolutely unattainable by mortals. Although she did not speak, Nguyen Ho knew who it was by the fragrance. The celestial maiden's voice was not quite like that of an ordinary person. One could sense a lofty detachment. Yet for some reason, when it reached Nguyen Ho's ears, it carried a different kind of gentleness. Is Your Majesty worried about that Huan showman, or Huang Hui's faction, or Pei Yuanzhao? Although Miaoshang Celestial Maiden was a deity, she seemed to be very clear about mortal affairs. If these three forces converged, calling it internal turmoil and external aggression would be an understatement. Nguyen Ho turned his head and glanced over. Is the Celestial Maiden worried that I will be discouraged by difficulties? That is unnecessary. I am not the type to shrink back. Miaoshang Celestial Maiden, I know. From the very first time I met Your Majesty, I knew. Speaking of which, at that time, I had also just been born not long ago. My heart in turmoil, thinking I was about to perish in the mortal world again, not knowing what year or month it would be before people remembered me again. Nguyen Ho. How so? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden. This divine position of Miaoshang Celestial Maiden is that of a principal deity of a nation. Born from the votive power of incense offerings from the Western Liang Women's Kingdom and various foreign states of old. Because of this, it prospered, and naturally, it would also vanish like smoke along with the national destiny of a dynasty that had long since been destroyed. But the national destiny of the dynasties that worshipped this Miaoshang Celestial Maiden has been destroyed countless times. This Celestial Maiden naturally also dissipated accordingly time and again, and then was born again due to worship. The Great Sheng collapsed. Northern Liang was restored and worshipped as once more. But Northern Liang was fleeting and was also destroyed. Just as I was about to be forgotten once more, it was Your Majesty who saved me. Nguyen Ho. Gods can also die? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden. Gods will die. And also will not die. Deities will be forgotten, then remembered again, giving birth to a new one. Nguyen Ho looked at her. So, if I am defeated and perish, you will have to die once more. Miaoshang Celestial Maiden. It's not that I will have to die once more, but that this, I, will truly die. The new Miaoshang Celestial Maiden, due to different worship, a different era, will naturally be different from me. However, I do not feel that Your Majesty will be defeated. Nguyen Ho turned around completely. Oh, in the Celestial Maiden's eyes. What kind of person am I? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden slowly stepped forward. Initially, I knew Your Majesty was the Son of Heaven of this Western city. Even if not great, you could hold out in this land of the Western city for some time. Nguyen Ho, and then? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden said, I believed Your Majesty to be a true dragon. Perhaps one day capable of stirring the 9 provinces, unifying the world once more, ending this chaotic era, ceasing the slaughter in the world, and also reordering this shattered heaven, earth, and divine way. Nguyen Ho and Miaoshang Celestial Maiden's acquaintance stemmed from an instance of lust at first sight, of seeing profit and conceiving a scheme. Between the two, there was only the satisfaction of desires, or the exchange of benefits, a mutual necessity for both sides. But as days turned into months, they would inevitably share some heartfelt words. Miaoshang Celestial Maiden slowly walked to Nguyen Ho's side. Looking at his face, the great Shang dynasty had been passed down for over 300 years through many generations. A good appearance was merely basic. But something about Nguyen Ho at this moment overshadowed even that fine appearance, leaving a deeper impression on people. Appearance is born from the heart. Nguyen Ho's eyes revealed the boundless desires within him. Miaoshang Celestial Maiden seemed to greatly like these eyes, and couldn't help but raise her hand to caress his neck. However, later, I developed a somewhat grander vision, a more intense thought. Nguyen Ho. What thought? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden. You could, perhaps, become a heavenly emperor of antiquity. Nguyen Ho. Heavenly emperor. The deity seated in the divine realm, or the clay statue displayed in a temple? A status as venerable as heavenly emperor. Yet when Nguyen Ho spoke of it, it seemed to carry a hint of mockery. Miaoshang Celestial Maiden shook her head. The heavenly emperor of antiquity. Nguyen Ho asked again. What was the heavenly emperor of antiquity like? Miaoshang Celestial Maiden, for example, like the Yellow Emperor. And Nguyen Ho, when he arrived here, his initial thought was, I don't need to care where this place is. Nor do I need to care whose identity and body this is. I have only one goal. I want to go on a killing spree. Kill to my heart's content. I want to do whatever I please. To my heart's content, do whatever I want. Sha Jia and Shang Zhou should abdicate to me. Which tyrant dares to contend first? Once I'm satisfied, even if someone chops off my head one day, it doesn't matter. Winner takes all. Loser is abandoned. Nguyen Ho lacked reverence for many things. But at this moment, hearing these words from the Celestial Maiden, he still felt somewhat moved. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Sao. After scheming for so long, it was time to start reeling in the net. The next day, early morning court session, and in the imperial court, the debate over deploying troops continued as usual. Although Nguyen Ho already had someone chosen in his heart, if an emperor were to directly voice it, he would no longer be an emperor. At this very moment, Nguyen Ho's faction in the court also had its loyal supporters. As the officials split into two factions, each recommending their own candidate, Tran Quang stepped forward. General Yuchi is skilled in warfare. He can certainly annihilate the Hon Two-Man. Therefore, I recommend General Yuchi. Upon hearing this, Nguyen Ho looked down from his high throne. Let Yuchi Sung Vu command the troops to annihilate the Hon Two-Man. Holding the position of Commander-in-Chief of the Shimin Yiking Allied Forces. What do you, my dear ministers, think? Below, among the officials, the expressions of several leading figures changed drastically. Especially Hoang Hoi, whose eyes stared intently at Tran Quang. How could he not have thought that a traitor would suddenly appear within his own faction? Hoang Hui's expression changed drastically. That Yuchi Sung Vu is merely an insignificant captain before the palace. How can your majesty entrust him with the crucial responsibility of the Shimin Yiking commandery? Li Hoang Dao also spoke up to dissuade him. Your majesty, please reconsider. Matters of state are critically dependent on military affairs and sacrificial rites. The position of commanding the three armies cannot be easily entrusted to anyone less than a pillar of the state. A minister of great importance. How can such a vital military and state affair be casually entrusted to someone unqualified? I implore your majesty to be cautious. These two had recently been trying to install their own people in charge of this Shimin Yiking commandery, vigorously recommending their candidates before the emperor. The two had been fighting tooth and nail. And now, suddenly, Tran Quang had emerged, causing their schemes to instantly fall apart. At this moment, several more people stepped forward to recommend Yuchi Sung Vu. In an instant, the situation in the imperial court had shifted. Some opportunists dared not utter another word, while some perceptive individuals, sensing an opportunity, also joined in recommending Yuchi Sung Vu. In a fleeting moment, a resounding chorus of support for Yuchi Sung Vu echoed through the court, swaying even more people. Seeing this situation, Nguyen Ho finally nodded slightly. If all you dear ministers deem General Yuchi suitable, then let General Yuchi command the troops and annihilate the Hon two-man. Hoang Hoi and Li Hoang Dao's eyes widened. How is it, all deem? Am I not a person? Am I not still objecting? Hoang Hoi stepped forward, continuing to plead, Your Majesty, matters of military and state require utmost caution. Nguyen Ho looked at Hoang Hoi, still struggling below, his gaze like one looking at a dead man. Indeed, caution is necessary. Then I shall summon Yuchi Sung Vu for questioning. If he is satisfactory, he will go. If not, we will find someone else. The officials were all astute. They understood at once that this was no questioning, but clearly a farewell before assuming office. Isn't this just a farewell visit? This perfunctory attitude of Nguyen Ho. He couldn't even be bothered to feign otherwise. I have decided, it is Yuchi Sung Vu. You all. Who agrees? Who objects? Li Hoang Dao now saw clearly. This wasn't Tran Quang recommending Yuchi Sung Vu. It was clearly the emperor's intention. This man was also a reed swaying in the wind, seeing the unfavorable turn of events. He immediately went along, especially when he looked up and happened to see Nguyen Ho's gaze towards Hoang Hoi. Like looking at a dead man. In an instant, Li Hoang Dao's body went limp, and he prostrated himself on the ground. Your Majesty, I also find General Yuchi more suitable. This time, a large group of people following Li Hoang Dao knelt in unison. Even those from Hoang Hui's faction, having realized something, also prostrated themselves one after another. Only Hoang Hoi remained standing alone amidst the crowd. Yet to react, feeling a chill run through his entire body. This defeat in court was not important, but in this moment, he smelled the scent of his own death without a burial place, and the scent of his entire Hoang family, up and down, being exterminated. Hoang Hoi trembled all over and immediately followed suit. Kneeling on the ground, the events of the early court session immediately caused great waves both inside and outside the capital. A mere sneeze from the high-ranking figures above could perhaps unleash devastating floods below. As for Grand Chancellor Li Hoang Dao, Nguyen Ho's good father-in-law and family member, he felt things were not right at all. He hurried back to his residence. Many who wished to detain him outside could not. The situation had changed too quickly, making him, who usually considered himself preeminent and a master manipulator of court politics, feel somewhat unable to grasp the current changes in the Great Sheng court. Sitting in his carriage, Li Hoang Dao was in a state of panic. Could it be? Am I really old? Inside the carriage, several of Li Hoang Dao's aides also discussed with him what had happened in court today. It's truly bizarre. Why would this Tran Quang suddenly side with the emperor? And in the court, why did so many people suddenly jump out to support that Yuchi Sung Vu? It is said that when His Majesty visited the imperial stables the other day, he conveniently stopped by Thach Kiu estate. Previously, we could still get some news from within the palace. Now, the palace is sealed tight, not a shred of news leaks out. This situation is not good at all. What should we do next? At this moment, someone spoke up. The emperor's authority is growing stronger by the day. The patriarch should consider the future more carefully. The others immediately looked at this person. Frowning, Li Hoang Dao glanced at this person, then at the others, and sighed. Sitting in this position, there are times when one's circumstances are beyond one's control. Sometimes Li Hoang Dao felt it wasn't necessary to do so much. But as the leader of a faction, at least in the eyes of others, he was the spokesperson for a power. Sometimes he represented the interests of many people, even if he didn't want to act. Countless individuals would push him forward. Arriving back at his residence, the others withdrew, but that one person suddenly followed Li Hoang Dao inside. Patriarch, I have a few words to say. Li Hoang Dao, if you have something to say, speak freely. It's all right. This person, since Nguyen Ho's death, those people have all been unwilling to accept it, still clinging to thoughts of the past. Patriarch, think about it. His Majesty now is no longer as he was before. Even if the patriarch successfully recommends someone for the post of commander-in-chief of the Shimin Yiking Allied forces. So what? Can it compare to Prime Minister Nguyen Ho of old? And that Nguyen Ho was also destroyed overnight. His Majesty's methods of turning clouds with one hand and rain with the other truly show some signs of wanting to rejuvenate the great Shane. The patriarch is the emperor's father-in-law. Why must you oppose his majesty and let those people profit? The current emperor is young, and the harem is without a principal consort. Her ladyship is held in the highest esteem. If her ladyship gives birth to a prince, that would be the eldest son, and she could legitimately become the true empress. This is what the patriarch should be doing. After hearing this, Li Hoang Dao pondered for a moment, then nodded repeatedly. You are right. If it were before, Li Hoang Dao would certainly not have had this thought. Li Hoang Dao. With this background, with this learning and ability, what's so impossible about becoming prime minister? But successive blows made Li Hoang Dao increasingly respectful and fearful of Nguyen Ho, and he gradually realized that he himself truly lacked any significant learning or ability. Entering the main hall, Li Hoang Dao immediately summoned his seventh son. This seventh young master Li wore a Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk. Those who didn't know might mistake him for a Taoist priest. Li Hoang Dao paid no mind and instructed him. Quickly go to the palace. Go see that good-for-nothing sister of yours. The seventh young master thought his father had something important to instruct and cautiously asked. Is there something you want to ask? The mere thought of it angered Li Hoang Dao, and he was also a little impatient. Ask her what's wrong with her belly. Why there's still no movement. If she can't do it, don't blame me, her father, for finding someone else to replace her. Li the seventh was stunned for a moment, then actually asked seriously, who to replace her with? Ninth sister, 10th sister, or 13th sister? Li Hoang Dao slammed the table and stood up, rebellious son. Very quickly, Li the seventh was almost kicked out. The seventh young master, looking a bit disheveled, I'll go right away. Li Hoang Dao waved his hand again. Come back. Li the seventh turned his head in confusion. Father? Li Hoang Dao said, let 9th sister, 10th sister, and 13th sister go to the palace together, to visit their pitiful, helpless sister. The seventh young master changed out of his Taoist-like robe and prepared to enter the palace to pay respects to her ladyship. He brought his 9th sister, 10th sister, and 13th sister with him, to visit his lonely sister in the deep palace and chat a little about sibling affection. As for Li Hoang Dao, he lay stretched out on his bed and picked up the Taoist scripture beside him. The old man lay supine, his eyes half closed as he began to murmur the incantations. Heaven and earth seemed to have become much more expansive. Chapter Bayat Huang Hui's residence. In the sky, a cloud, appearing from nowhere, obscured the sun, making the scene seem somewhat somber. Most of Huang Hui's faction had arrived by now, gathered in the residence, only they no longer possessed their usual leisurely demeanor. Yesterday, a grand plan had clearly been set, and everyone had been meticulously assigned their tasks. Everyone was certain. Today, they were sure they could smoothly secure the position of governor of the Western Manyi Kong Prefecture. Who would have thought that at court today, they would suffer such a disastrous defeat? When winning, they would chuckle. When losing, they naturally started blaming each other. How did it come to this? How could this happen? Weren't things supposed to be all arranged? How did the plan get so messed up? The situation didn't unfold at all according to what we decided yesterday. Where exactly did the problem occur? As they spoke, those talking began to look towards the silent ones in the crowd. Their gazes extremely sharp. At this very moment, they had begun to find targets to pin parts of the blame on. Yesterday, they laughed and talked while assigning tasks. Today, they angrily blamed each other. At court today, why didn't you say anything? And you, why didn't you follow the plan? Didn't I tell you to contact Tran Quang? How did you contact him? Did you not receive any news beforehand? Or did you betray Duke Huang? I knew you all were problematic. These turncoats couldn't admit they were scared because the situation looked bad. So they hastily explained, we hadn't even had a chance to speak before the situation became chaotic. How could we say anything? It's not that I didn't follow the plan. Who knew that Tran Quang would recommend Yuchi Chongwu? And so many people suddenly sided with Tran Quang. It's not that we didn't speak up, it's all because that Tran Quang is too insidious. Those who spoke up today immediately began to criticize those who hadn't. They didn't talk about what had been accomplished but started talking about what others failed to do. Those who failed in their tasks, in turn, started saying the others hadn't done anything at all. In the end, all fingers pointed towards Tran Quang. Although Tran Quang didn't always fully side with Huang Hui. Being from an influential aristocratic family in Taitan, these people naturally considered him one of their own, who should have stood with them. Now that he didn't side with them, he was naturally considered a traitor, a villain. This Tran Quang is truly a shameless scoundrel. And those others, to think they'd followed Tran Quang too. We must punish them severely. Submit a memorial. I want to submit a memorial to impeach him. Submit what memorial? Didn't you see that Tran Quang's actions today were clearly to curry favor with the Son of Heaven? How could the Son of Heaven punish him? The residence was in an uproar. Huang Hui's faction had begun to show signs of division. However, Huang Hui appeared very calm. Faced with his faction on the verge of splintering, he was like Lu Wang fishing. At this moment, he finally spoke. Quote, "All right, today's events were all orchestrated by that scoundrel Tran Quang. It has nothing to do with any of you. A person like Dao Ji, who momentarily fawns over superiors, how can he remain in a high position for long? As for Yuchi Chongwu, a wet behind-the-ears brat, how can he hold the post of governor? All of you just wait and see. Just wait until he deceives the monarch and harms his generals, suffers defeat and loses his life. That will be when his head is separated from his body. His corpse exposed in the wilderness." Huang Hui spoke at length, and everyone present nodded repeatedly. But after everyone left, Huang Hui no longer had the strong demeanor he displayed when others were present. Huang Hui sat down and noticed that his hand holding the teacup was also trembling. Turning his hand to make clouds, flipping it to make rain, the Son of Heaven's methods are truly formidable. It wasn't just Huang Hui who was afraid. Just now in the residence, the members of Huang Hui's faction, each shirking responsibility and criticizing one another, weren't they also, in their hearts, beginning to fear the Son of Heaven? In a way, it was also an admission regarding Nguyen Ho, this demonic Son of Heaven. They were truly terrified. They felt as if the statue on the throne had come alive, becoming uncontrollable, its favor and wrath unpredictable. Everyone left, and the main hall became quiet. But Huang Hui had not been sitting still for long before he immediately stood up. He felt an intense sense of danger. Servants, a man with the appearance of a steward stepped forward and immediately asked, "Family head, what is it?" This steward was not only Huang Hui's steward but also a kinsman. Often, he could even directly act on his behalf, devising schemes that influenced court affairs. "Make a trip to our ancestral home in Yen County. Ask our revered ancestors if they have any premonitions." The steward, "Regarding what aspect should I ask?" Huang Hui, "Ask about fortune and misfortune." This Huang clan, behind them, also had some mystical elements. The steward committed this to memory and was about to make some preparations. But unexpectedly, Huang Hui was very urgent. "Depart right now. No need for preparations. And while you're at it." The steward, "While I'm at it." "What?" Huang Hui hesitated for a moment, feeling perhaps he had overthought things. "If anything untoward happens, tell the family to be prepared. And tell Erlang not to be too hesitant." The steward's expression changed instantly. He could clearly understand the meaning behind those words. After speaking, Huang Hui also wrote a letter. The steward didn't ask who the letter was for, only vaguely saw the character, Bui, at the beginning of the letter. The steward took a group of men out of the capital city, heading straight towards Yen County. The Huang clan originated from Yen County. It could be said this was the wealthiest place in all of Taitan, and the entire county belonged to the Huang clan. The county magistrate was Huang Hui's son. The officials high and low were all former disciples and subordinates of the Huang family. And all the farms and tenant farmers were serfs nurtured by the Huang family for generations. Officials, clerks, commoners, soldiers, all belonged to the Huang family. Even the local deities there belonged to the Huang family. This place, if its gates were closed, would be a small kingdom unto itself. Giddy up, giddy up. As the steward was riding, several arrows suddenly shot from ahead. The men accompanying him cried out in pain and fell from their horses. The steward immediately panicked and shouted loudly, "Who is it? Who's there?" At this moment, strange sounds came from all around. Who. The steward didn't know what those sounds were, but his heart was filled with extreme fear. Finally, with a crack sound, the steward felt a cold sensation on his neck, as if something had been clamped onto it. He saw a golden collar clamped around his neck. In an instant, the steward felt all the hairs on his body stand on end. Sweat pouring down. He didn't know what this object was, but he vaguely understood. If I move even slightly, this head of mine will likely be gone. Elsewhere, from the woods, a person in uniform stepped out. Looking at the golden collar on the steward's neck, I must admit, it's indeed easy to use. Looking closely at this person's waist, a command token from the Trintap Bureau was hanging there. This steward was captured before he could even reach his ancestral home in Yen County. Coming out from the rear palace, Nguyen Ho had just witnessed the scene of consort Li reuniting with her family, a beautiful picture of orioles and swallows embracing. He then thought of the few people he had met at the Li family's villa before. Quote, "It seems they aren't the same ones as last time. Where does this Li family get so many daughters? No, those ones probably weren't daughters. Nieces, perhaps, but there were already over a dozen of them. And surely there were more. This Li Hongdao is truly prolific. Don't look at this Li Hongdao as if he has no abilities. That particular capability of his is indeed very strong." Then, the image of that young female Taoist priestess appeared in Nguyen Ho's mind. Entering the palace still wearing Taoist robes. What is this about? He didn't believe it, but for some reason, the prudent yet beautiful demeanor of that female Taoist priestess left a deep impression, making her unforgettable. After thinking for a moment, Nguyen Ho vaguely understood why. Nowadays, Taoist robes are also like a type of uniform, sitting in this position of emperor. If women don't have something special and outstanding, it's truly difficult to attract the Son of Heaven's attention. Either they must be devastatingly beautiful, peerless in the world, or their status must be so unique and special that it can arouse a strong desire to conquer. Or, they can only rely on some other special points. Thinking of this, Nguyen Ho increasingly felt that these aristocratic families were truly formidable. Overt paths were closed to them, as were covert ones. Did they intend to breach the gates of heaven itself? To target the Son of Heaven like this, they truly stop at nothing. Their intentions are truly damnable. Nguyen Ho hadn't been back in the Purple Divinity Hall for long when Wang Ru quietly entered. "Your Majesty, there's a message." Wang Ru immediately presented the news just sent by the Trintap Bureau to Nguyen Ho. Nguyen Ho listened carefully. He had already anticipated the other matters, but one particular point immediately caught his attention. The Huang family in Yen County worships a deity? What deity? Very quickly, Nguyen Ho learned which deity the Huang family in Yen County worshipped. Shigong, god of the earth, 2D Than. In this era, the term 2D Than was not yet common, nor was the sight of earth gods everywhere, with every village having a shrine to the earth god. But Nguyen Ho didn't pay much mind, after all. In his memories, he had heard the titles of many great deities. The god of the earth. What was this one worth? Just a minor deity, not even in the main pantheon. Unexpectedly, the celestial maiden Miao Shang quickly appeared. Nguyen Ho lacked much common knowledge about the way of the gods. But fortunately, he had the celestial maiden palace, and celestial maiden Miao Shang immediately came to help him resolve his doubts. "Your Majesty, you must bring down this Huang family and seize the divine arts of this Shigong deity." Celestial maiden Miao Shang spoke very sincerely. As she said these words, she even sat down beside Nguyen Ho. leaning very close as she spoke. This also made Nguyen Ho feel her earnestness. Or rather, her hope that Nguyen Ho would take Qigong. This seemingly unremarkable deity. Seriously, Nguyen Ho? Could it be that this Qigong has something special? Celestial Maiden Miao Shang. This is the god of land and grain. Kak Ban Dang Nghe Trian Demon Emperor Tai Great Dragon Audio Channel Chapter Tam. Just these 4 words. Gods of soil and grain. Instantly enlightened Nguyen Ho, making him clearly understand the importance of this Qigong. While Nguyen Ho was deep in thought, Celestial Maiden Ju Hong approached a little closer and called out softly. Your Majesty, Your Majesty? Nguyen Ho, still pondering, looked up. The Celestial Maiden was sitting to one side, leaning against the table, her gaze fixed on him. Today, the Celestial Maiden wore a light yellow mesh gown. The thin silk layer of her rainbow skirt was rolled up to her elbows. Without any powder or rouge, her beauty still outshone pearls and jade. Her thick, dark hair was coiled into a snake-like bun, adorned with a golden chew hairpin. Her skin was like jade, her figure full and well-rounded, exuding a divine and noble aura. She was neither too thin nor did she appear plump. A fraction more or less would have marred her perfect form. Noticing Nguyen Ho's gaze, Celestial Maiden Ju Hong moved a little closer. Their eyes meeting, she asked, Am I beautiful? Had it been an ordinary man, approached and gazed upon by such an immortal-like goddess, he would likely have averted his gaze long ago. But Nguyen Ho did not flinch. It was just that, unlike the places he usually gazed at without restraint, today he only looked into her eyes. Nguyen Ho, beautiful. These 2 pairs of eyes also reflected their distinct characteristics. One was consuming like fire, the other, tranquil as water. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong said, But my beauty, not to mention others, even that goddess Bok Company is by no means inferior to me. Speaking of background and status, that goddess Bok Company was once the principal deity of a nation. As for us, if compared to the ancient Queen Mother of the West from distant antiquity, the difference is like heaven and earth. Closer to our time, compared to the Luo River goddess, we are merely like fireflies to the full moon. In this world, so-called peerless beauties are like 100 flowers blooming, each with its own unique charm. Beauties like myself, Your Majesty can have as many as you desire. And those more beautiful than I. This land of 9 provinces certainly has no shortage of them. The Son of Heaven controls others, he is not to be controlled by others. But the sovereign of these 9 provinces, in all their vastness, there is only one. After speaking, the Celestial Maiden sat down again, her voice becoming gentle and measured, and all the more persuasive. In the future, she continued, if Your Majesty wishes to restore order to the land and become the master of the state altars of the 9 provinces, then these gods of state altars, like this Qigong here, absolutely cannot be overlooked. No wonder the subject had suddenly shifted. Was she reminding him, or encouraging him? If one became the sovereign of the 9 provinces, could there be anything better? Nguyen Ho looked at Celestial Maiden Ju Hong, who was trying every means to make him take this matter seriously, and couldn't help but say, I understand the Celestial Maiden's meaning. Nguyen Ho stated, this god of state altars, I must obtain him. After stating his intention, Nguyen Ho then asked further. However, regarding the specifics of Qigong and the gods of state altars, I would still like to ask the Celestial Maiden to elaborate. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong looked at Nguyen Ho, who had responded to her with such affirmation. A beautiful smile bloomed on her face, and she seemed immensely pleased inwardly. Then, Celestial Maiden Ju Hong carefully explained the unique aspects of this Qigong deity. Celestial Maiden Ju Hong stood up and slowly walked towards a map hanging in the hall. This Qigong, she began, Your Majesty can consider him as a county magistrate within the divine hierarchy. Nguyen Ho looked at the map. A county magistrate? Celestial Maiden Ju Hong pointed to the map. Qigong are deities that can be infeft in various places throughout the 9 provinces. But what you want them to do, and what they are capable of doing, depends on how Your Majesty and I choose to utilize them. Relying on the arts of the god of harvest, An area can achieve a bountiful harvest. Relying on the arts of the god of spring, an area's population can prosper. Used well, it will signify the reign of a sage emperor. With the country prosperous and the people at peace. Nguyen Ho was still looking into the celestial maiden's eyes. Previously, when he looked at the celestial maiden, he had only perceived her physical beauty. Today, however, he seemed to perceive another layer to her allure. In short, for Nguyen Ho to have been able to enlist her help from the very beginning was truly his good fortune. Nguyen Ho stood up and said to her, "Tonight, I have secretly summoned Yuchi Chongwu. That Shigong deity will not escape." Celestial maiden Du Hong bowed gracefully. Her voice tinged with a hint of flattery. In her eyes, there was admiration and also expectation. "So your majesty had already made arrangements." It was I who was being verbose. The illusory reality mirror glowed, and the celestial maiden, enveloped in layers of mist accompanying the light, flew back to the celestial palace within the bronze mirror. As Nguyen Ho watched the celestial maiden depart, he suddenly recalled her earlier words, where she used the topic of beauties to illustrate the importance of the sovereign of the 9 provinces and the state altars. She had spoken at length. It was to make Nguyen Ho clearly understand the importance of this god of state altars. Yet it also seemed to vaguely carry another kind of counsel. Did she feel I was going too far? Nguyen Ho felt that wasn't it. He then recalled that other phrase. Control others. Do not be controlled by others. The main point is, when controlling others, one must always remain clear-headed and not be swayed or enchanted by them. Nguyen Ho immediately recalled his recent luxurious and dissolute lifestyle. Ever since Li Gao County had entered the palace, Nguyen Ho had begun to immerse himself daily in listening to songs and would occasionally drink a few cups of wine. Once that wine entered his system, how could he not become muddle-headed? How could he not be susceptible to others' charms? This wine, it truly is detrimental. From tomorrow, he resolved, I will abstain from wine. Yuchi Chongwu had not been in the capital in recent days. Instead, he had been leading his men in training in Tam County. However, he had heard some news. He knew what had happened in the western capital city and was also aware that the Son of Heaven intended for him to go to Vu Prefecture. In the cold night wind, Yuchi Chongwu, cloaked, hurriedly passed through the main gate of the imperial city. Walking closely behind the eunuch leading the way, he felt no chill from the wind. Instead, a fire seemed to burn within him. The governorship of the Western Manyi Kong Commandery. This was an official position that allowed one to establish their own administrative office. A lifelong aspiration for military men. If he succeeded, he could truly become a general, independently commanding a region. After Yuchi Chongwu heard about the matter discussed in the imperial court, his very first thought was, His Majesty's grace is as vast as heaven and earth. If I can secure this governorship this time, I will repay him even with my life. Yuchi Chongwu was immensely grateful to the Son of Heaven. After walking some distance, Yuchi Chongwu took out a jade pendant and discreetly placed it in the eunuch's hand. He didn't ask why the Son of Heaven had summoned him, but instead inquired about recent affairs in the imperial court. The eunuch accepted the jade pendant, seeing that the inquiry was not about confidential matters within the palace or directly concerning the Son of Heaven. He felt no need for reticence. He mentioned that earlier, the Son of Heaven had disregarded the opinions of the court officials to select him as the governor of the Western Manyi Kong Commandery. But Grand Secretary Huang strenuously objected. So this matter, it still depends on you. General Yuchi. Hearing this, an unseen flame of anger flared within Yuchi Chongwu's heart. Despicable. What grudge does this damned old man harbor against me? To try and sabotage me like this? He couldn't recall any past grievances with this Huang Wei and understood clearly that this was a struggle for benefits. But at this very moment, that didn't prevent them from instantly becoming mortal enemies. Obstructing someone's path to promotion and fortune. This enmity was even greater than that of murdering one's parents. Upon entering the hall, Yuchi Chongwu vaguely discerned the Son of Heaven's figure and immediately dropped to his knees. Kowtowing forcefully several times, Your Majesty, the Son of Heaven bade him rise. Yuchi Chongwu stood up respectfully. His head still bowed, hands clasped, his gaze fixed on the floor tiles. Nguyen Ho gestured to one side. There, between two pillars, hung a screen, and in front of it was a low table with a letter placed upon it. Read it. Yuchi Chongwu immediately knelt again. This subject dares not, Nguyen Ho said. I command you to read it. Only then did Yuchi Chongwu pick it up to read. The moment he saw the opening lines, his expression changed. It was a letter addressed to the Grand General Pillar of the state. Bui Nguyen Kiu. Although it was unsigned, the content alone made it clear who the sender was, Huang Wei. Finished reading? Yuchi Chongwu's face was livid with rage. Your Majesty, this subject will go and kill that treacherous villain right now. Nguyen Ho shook his head. What use is there in merely killing this Huang Wei? Yuchi Chongwu, kneeling on the ground, declared, whatever your Majesty commands this subject to do, this subject shall carry out. Nguyen Ho walked over to the map and pointed to a spot on it. I want this Yen County, he said, to no longer belong to the Huang family. Yuchi Chongwu said, this subject will depart at once. Nguyen Ho stated, if you undertake this task, the scions of the noble families in this western city region will likely no longer tolerate your presence. Yuchi Chongwu dismissed it nonchalantly. This subject was never on the same path as them. Above this subject's head, there is only one sky. These words from Yuchi Chongwu were brimming with killing intent. Even from his tone alone, one could almost smell the metallic tang of a river of blood. However, Nguyen Ho was very pleased. Chapter Chin Nguyen Ho had hesitated for a long time, and prepared for a long time as well. Ultimately, he decided to strike ruthlessly against the Hoang family once and for all. When decisiveness was needed but not shown, it would, on the contrary, invite disaster. Either he wouldn't kill, or if he were to kill, he had to resolve the problem completely in one go. First, he managed to win over Tran Quang and a faction of local prominent families, making preparations to replace Hoang Hoi. Now, also because of that community god, he was completely resolved to uproot the Hoang clan in Yen Huyen County. Yen Huyen County. Late at night, a troop of horsemen, urging their steeds on at full gallop, arrived outside the city walls. A man peeked out and shouted towards the top of the city wall. Open the gate. Who goes there? Don't you recognize me? Why have you returned, sir? The family head has an important matter and instructed me to return to see the second young master. Below the city wall stood none other than the steward of Hoang Hui's residence. He was now standing plainly outside the city gate. However, his collar was turned up, concealing a golden circlet tightening around his neck, much like livestock bound by a rope. His expression at this moment was indeed somewhat unnatural. After all, he felt as if his head was constantly dangling from someone else's hand, ready to drop to the ground at any moment. Scared to death in his heart, how could he possibly appear natural? But the men on the city wall paid little heed, nor did they possess the wartime vigilance. This was Yen Huyen County. What could possibly happen here? Open the gate! Open the gate! Open the gate! In the dark night, the city gate creaked open. The captain under Yu Kai Sung Vu led his men into the city. The outcome was more than half certain. Move out! Seize the city gate! Upon seeing the city gate, Yu Kai Sung Vu's face lit up with joy. He immediately spurred his horse and charged into the city with his men. Yu Kai Sung Vu had ridden non-stop from Tam Huyen County to the foot of Yen Huyen County's walls. He didn't have many men with him, at least not enough to lay siege. Nor did he have the time for a siege. Moreover, this was a secret mission entrusted to him by His Majesty. How could he not understand its importance? Alerting the enemy would not only involve Yen Huyen County but also the imperial court, implicating Vu Prefecture and Lang Prefecture. He knew, as long as he completed this task, that Hoang Hoi was undoubtedly finished. And if that old dog Hoang Hoi didn't die, how could he ascend to the position of commander? Kill! Yu Kai Sung Vu led his troops charging into the city. The city gate was immediately captured, leaving behind more than 10 corpses. As Yu Kai Sung Vu entered the city gate, his gaze fixed on the trembling steward. And he bellowed, "Where is it?" "Near the north gate. Lead the way. Keep an eye on him. If he makes any suspicious moves, chop off his legs for me." Yes, there were soldiers in Nguyen County. About 200 of them. The core force of the Hoang clan. Of course, given some time, their power could grow much larger. These 200 men could instantly swell to over 1,000. Not to mention the surrounding families who had various ties with the Hoang family. They advanced straight towards the north. In the darkness, flames erupted. The county office appeared, with the martial arena right beside it. Connected, Yu Kai Sung Vu, on horseback, led the way, guiding his numerous soldiers through the long street and storming into the county office. The commotion outside was so great that it had long alerted the people and soldiers inside the county office. Now, as the two sides met, they immediately clashed. These men usually practiced martial arts, but engaging in battle in such a panicked state, they naturally gained no advantage. One could see Yu Kai Sung Vu's armored soldiers coordinating in groups of several. Various weapons attacking in succession, with archers providing crossbow cover from behind. Groups of armored soldiers stormed into the county office, while those inside fell one after another. The disparity between the two sides was not just in martial skill, but also in coordination. This gave the impression that Yu Kai Sung Vu's soldiers were like a surging tide, overwhelming all who resisted. Wave after wave, they continuously advanced deeper into the county office, and those who rushed out from inside were much like the Calabash brothers attempting to save their grandfather. For every one who emerged, one would fall, kneel and surrender. Anyone left standing, die. Volleys of arrows rained down. The piled-up corpses couldn't stop the armored soldiers from outside from rushing in. This time, the people inside completely collapsed. They either surrendered or began to flee. When Yu Kai Sung Vu entered the government office, the first thing he asked about was Hoang Hui's second son. Yu Kai Sung Vu. "Where's the man?" An armored soldier knelt on one knee. "It's not good, sir. This fellow is dead." Yu Kai Sung Vu didn't ask the cause of death. He wasn't afraid of him dying, only of him escaping. He said directly, "Dead is dead. For such a disloyal and unrighteous rebel, death is too good for him." Yu Kai Sung Vu spoke these words without any insincerity. He truly thought so in his heart. When have the Son of Heaven and the late Emperor ever mistreated this Hoang family? Yet this Hoang Hoi bites the hand that feeds him. Furthermore, what is this Hoang family doing raising so many soldiers? And possessing so much armor and weaponry? What are they preparing for? To rebel? Of course. From Hoang Hui's perspective, it was a different view. My Hoang clan has been in this Xiqing land for countless years. Generation after generation. In the dark night, the entirety of Nguyen County was in chaos. Under the steward's guidance, Yu Kai Sung Vu led his soldiers to accurately arrest and kill people. Everything proceeded in an orderly manner. Go out of the city. After cleaning up inside the city, killing and capturing those 200 soldiers, and killing Hoang Hui's son. Now, the entire organizational structure and the largest resistance force of Nguyen County were gone. And there was no leader. Yu Kai Sung Vu then led his troops straight to the estate outside the city, which was the residence of the Hoang clan lineage. Choosing the dead of night, besides having the steward who could guide them for a precise attack, was also to avoid alerting the enemy. This place also offered no resistance. Yu Kai Sung Vu had his troops surround the few exits, and the entire Hoang clan lineage, from top to bottom, was thus captured. Yu Kai Sung Vu surveyed this estate. This was no mere manor, inside and out. There were countless layers, with pavilions and towers hidden within. An uninformed onlooker might mistake it for an imperial palace. A man holding an imperial edict stepped forward and read it before everyone. By His Majesty's decree, Hoang Hoi conspired to commit treason. Those who had been local emperors for generations, reigning supreme in Nguyen County, became prisoners overnight. Those accustomed to wearing brocade and silk, eating delicacies, felt as if the sky had fallen upon them before they had even fully awakened to such a scene. The Hoang family soldiers, usually arrogant and domineering, now lay limp on the ground like dead snakes. One by one, they cried out loudly, "A great injustice." Yu Kai-sung Vu's mission was to eliminate the Hoang clan in Yanhuian County. Chu Ji County also accompanied him. But his mission was not just to assist Yu Kai-sung Vu, he had another item to retrieve. It was just that this item could only be obtained after the Hoang clan was completely eradicated. He followed along the entire way, entering the city gate, seizing the county seat, surrounding the estate, like peeling off layers of skin. Now he was finally about to see the core at the very center. Quick, where is the shrine? Chu Ji County paid no attention to how Yu Kai-sung Vu would deal with those people next. Nor did he bother to listen to their cries of injustice. Instead, he went straight to a shrine. However, when Chu Ji County saw this shrine, he shook his head. A mere minor earth god. Yet the shrine is so large. Truly, its prestige is too great. In fact, this community shrine was half shrine, half considered the ancestral hall of the Hoang clan. Chu Ji County didn't care much about that. He directly led men carrying torches to charge in. Someone beside him took out a bronze key. But Chu Ji County didn't even glance at it, telling his men to break down the door and rush in directly. Crash! The shrine door was smashed open, and figures holding torches appeared at the entrance. The firelight, following the pushed-open shrine door, slowly crept inside, illuminating a statue on the altar. In the doorway, Chu Ji Company with eyes as sharp as an eagle's scrutinized the deity statue. Community god, I finally found you. This statue of the community god, upon closer inspection, bore some resemblance to that Hoang Hoi. Having found his target, Chu Ji County laughed heartily. You really made me search to death for you. However, that smile looked somewhat ferocious under the firelight, and the statue of the community god on the altar. For some unknown reason, it seemed to be trembling slightly. The weather was humid, and a few streaks of water seeped down from the top of the god statue's head. Like sweat breaking out from fear. This hunting dog of Nguyen Ho. It was unknown since when he had acquired such an imposing presence that even deities would be frightened out of their wits. You have just finished listening to episode B of the audiobook, Demon Emperor, at Great Dragon Audio Channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest updates. Thank you so much.